talk a little bit about California real estate prices that are up here, up above where the screen ends. They are the highest basically in the country. New York City, Honolulu, Washington, D.C., some of the others that are very high, but overall California houses 9 of the 15 most expensive areas in the country, including some of the most expensive in the world, Menlo Atherton, Beverly Hills, Santa Monica, places like that. Nevertheless, let's discuss part of the reason, like for example, Los Angeles, where I'm from, that the home prices are so high. Look, we were looking in the area, $1.7 million for a 4-bedroom, 2,700 foot square house in a mediocre area. That would get you so much more anywhere else, virtually, outside of California. And the question is why? Now, Los Angeles, for example, Southern California, there are several factors that go into housing prices. First, there is demand. And in terms of demand, it's a great place to live. I mean, especially because of the weather. The weather in Southern California, absolutely amazing. Some of the best weather on the planet. It's rarely too cold. Sometimes it's too hot, but most of the time it's a perfect temperature. Fantastic weather drives demand, as does the fact that there's so much industry there. There's Hollywood is the place of dreams. There's great food. There's forward-thinking people. There's a lot of pluses to living in Southern California. So demand is certainly there, in addition to the fact that there are Chinese buyers that are trying to park their money in the states where property laws exist, and they know the Chinese government just can't willy-nilly come and take them away, their riches, their property. So now we're going to talk about supply. And of course, part of the fact is that Los Angeles is already fairly built up, especially on the west side. There's not a lot of available land, and many of these places have been built long ago in the 1950s, 1960s, and they are just prime property. And in order to get that, you know, you got to still pay a pretty penny. There's not that much of it. There's a lot of demand. So in terms of supply, the challenge is, according to the Los Angeles Times, when you come to the building codes that California has, they're completely onerous. There are 21 million words, according to the Los Angeles Times, on the books in terms of building codes, in terms of building laws, that are incredibly restrictive. And compare that to other states where the code book is like this compared to like this. Makes a huge difference in the cost of building something in terms of how easy it is. In addition to this fact, it's virtually impossible to get a permit. You have to apply and pay fees up the wazoo. It's like $30,000 to apply for a new building permit, $50,000. That adds in directly to the price that a developer can sell it to you for. Then there's the fact that you have these environmental codes that people can sue for. So if somebody is one of these NIMBY people, not in my backyard, you're not building the house next to me, you're not building this housing project, whatever it might be, they can sue not based on their real thoughts on the matter, the fact that they don't want you there, the fact that they don't want new people coming in, whatever it might be. They're able to sue based on environmental codes, and because the state so often sides with them, it becomes very problematic. I hate that word, but it becomes very challenging for developers to decide to build, because embedded in the decision are not only the fees, but the risk of investing all the money in your project and then being sued. So that has to be calculated in the expected sales price of the house. Now that ratchets it up pretty substantially. Now, when you compare that to the state of New York, which has similar environmental codes on the books, pretty onerous. So the difference there is that there's not the same incentive in New York to sue, because the courts so rarely, as opposed to California, side with the plaintiffs, whereas the California codes, you're the plaintiffs in an environmental case. Oh boy, Woco, California will side with you. Now let's take a look at time frame. You are an investor, you're a builder, you want to create new housing for people to increase the supply, which will lower the cost. In Nevada, in Arizona, you want to build a big housing project. To get approval and to start building might take 18 months. In California, it's very often 10 plus years. Often up to 20. There's a housing project in somewhere in northwest Los Angeles, I believe, northeast Los Angeles, where the Tejon project, and it's been ongoing for 25 years that somebody's been trying to get this housing project completed. 25 years. Do you think that the investors have made their return? How many of the original investors are 6 feet under? How many of them were put there from the stress of investing their money and not actually being able to start the project? Not actually being able to start the project! Another factor is the fact that despite being a very resource-rich state because of the environmental regulations, California makes it almost impossible to operate a quarry, a timber operation, anything that is used to build houses is not readily available inside the state and thus must be transported out from outside the state, in addition to the fact that there are regulations onto the books as to what you can use. Now this adds at least 10% to all the materials that go into the houses, despite the fact that these are basically the same materials that go into houses in Nevada and Arizona. They're 10% more. So you add all these things together. We're going up, 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 up. Now you take into account the government uncertainty. You have the woke leftist government of California that wants to enact rent control, and you don't know how much you're going to be able to rent out the house for, whether or not you can raise the prices, and this adds uncertainty, which of course then when you're making the calculation as to the expected risk and the needed return, ups it to the point where it's nearly impossible to build unless the prices are way, way, way up here. So it's not the fact that California housing, because California is something like 95% not urban. It's 95% like nature, desert, forest, whatever it is. There's still a lot of land to build throughout the state, maybe not on the west side of Los Angeles or San Francisco, but there's still a lot of land to build, but the housing prices statewide are sky high, mainly due to these regulations. Yes, there is added demand because many people want to come to the state because of its natural beauty, etc., the weather, but it's the regulations. And so as someone who wants people to prosper, while there have to be some regulations on the books, you have to have the houses be earthquake proof. You can't just build them out of tin cans and straw. You know, you've got to be able to have that, but the regulations that make something cost so much, and you know who wins? The people that already own houses, because those prices keep going up because of the limited supply and the ever increasing demand, so those prices keep going up, and the people that are collecting your fees. They're the winners, because you can try to build something in Los Angeles and it's impossible. You have to apply for you have to pay the fees, then you have to get the environmental studies done, the soil samples done, and all these things add up dramatically, just making it so impossible to get anything done. And that's what happens when you have too many regulations. So urge your state senators, Californians, whoever's out there, to reduce the regulatory hurdles for builders to come so that the population can continue to live there, so that young people that are coming up aren't priced out of the possibility of living in the state. And if you just take a look at the fact that Los Angeles, they're building housing for homeless people because they want to be kind and it's the woke thing to do, whatever. I mean, I support people having a place to live, but you want to give it away, and it's $500,000 a unit. We bought a 4-bedroom house in another state, moving from Los Angeles, for that price. Last thought, I have 2 friends that want to live on the west side of Los Angeles that have lived there forever, but they want to buy their own house. They make $400,000 a year together. Very intelligent, wonderful people with great paying jobs, obviously, and they refuse because they don't want to be slaves to the bank. Even with that, with the taxation that California has in terms of its 1.25% is much more than neighboring places, especially in Los Angeles, et cetera, et cetera. All the taxes that they take off of your income. It's just an inhospitable place to live because of the government. Some government, okay. Too much government, no good, no good. See you, Californians. I don't miss the state much. Peace and blessings to everybody.